4 important indicators for the Venezuelan economy in 2024. Today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
We have to restructure our outlook regarding the Venezuelan economy on 2024 since a few announcements on the past couple of weeks regarding the sanctions that the United States has on the Venezuelan economy. Recently, due to the issues regarding that we have the upcoming election this year, 2024, in Venezuela, and one of the main candidates, actually the main opposition candidate, Maria Corina Machado, is legally not allowed to participate on such elections by the local authorities, and the United States didn't like this and took a further review of the sanction schemes that it has, especially the OFAC, the Office for Finance, Foreign Finance of the U.S. Treasury Department. And one big one is the sanctions against Minerven. Minerven is the government state-owned mining company that doesn't allow to do further business with internationals because they're going to be sanctioned. They're people that make some business with, this particular company, mining company, mostly is very important regarding the gold industry within Venezuela. So this company has been sanctioned. They have until February, these days in February, to keep business internationally. And the sanctions are going to be reviewed. Right now, there is a process of sanction easing during 6 months. They expire on April, and they're going to be further reviewed due to this particular issue with this political candidate. So that affects a little bit the outlook for the Venezuelan economy. And one of the main outlooks was further economic growth, GDP growth for 2024. It was poised to grow around 10%, roughly. Now that can be reduced. Still growth. There is projected by the consensus is around 10%. Now that can drop to, let's say, 5 to 7% if the sanctions are put on structure yet again. And today we are going to discuss 4 important economic indicators now with the further sanction scheme. So let's start. The first one, Venezuela, we have to talk about inflation. I have to discuss yet again that all of the inflation data that you see worldwide, where Venezuela, used to be number 1 regarding inflation, right now is number 2, number 3. I believe Argentina and Lebanon has surpassed the inflation rate of Venezuela. And still, this is just a nominal reference because since 2018, the Venezuelan economy has been de facto dollarized. So the standard for the Venezuelan economy is not the Venezuelan Bolivar, it's the US dollar. Everything is denominated in dollars, even small transactions that are made on Venezuelan Bolivar. So basically, right now, the Venezuelan economy is working with these 2 currencies as a medium of exchange. The most important is the US dollar, but right after the Venezuelan Bolivar. How does affect the Venezuelan economy? Well, what happens is, yet again, 2017, we had hyperinflation until 2021. It became irrelevant by 2019 when the de facto dollarization of the economy was just cruising by. And until 2021, we had a high inflation rate, nominal on bolivars, but at some point it's meaningless, especially if you are an international, because you're going to come here, you're going to buy goods and services with US dollars. Very good. Now, the key issue regarding the Venezuelan Bolivar is that people here don't earn in bolivars, they earn in US dollars. A handful, a very important, significant population, mostly the poorest population in Venezuela, say the bottom 50%, they still receive a significant amount of their income in Venezuelan bolivars, and sometimes don't keep up with inflation. Although even the Venezuelan government is paying indexed, paying in bolivars, indexed with the current exchange rate. Remember, since 2018, the Venezuelan bolivar freely trades on the open market with the US dollar. So this barrier of between the Venezuelan bolivar and the US dollar that was eliminated since 2018. Okay. But the most important thing is some of these people, the poorest people in Venezuela, that their significant income comes in Venezuelan bolivars. They have, of course, this instability, maybe on the exchange rate, and that can cause some issues to some companies, small and mid-sized companies. They still receive some income due to their clients and so on. That there are, a bunch bigger population that has this significant income on Venezuelan bolivars, and that can affect somehow. It's not a big impact, but it's a significant impact on their cash flow, and that's something that it has to be taken into consideration for further GDP growth and economic growth amongst this tier of companies. Of course, bunch of companies within the Venezuelan economy that can affect a little bit their financials, their accounting structure, but still, remember, it's a second-tier issue because the Venezuelan economy is de facto dollarized. Still, I have to remember that this high inflation rate, nominal inflation rate, that is on around 100%, that sounds harsh, but actually is very low compared to what we had in the past. Remember, still nominal inflation rate in bolivars. And this inflation right now is on a disinflationary trend. And there's some volatility on the process. Now, volatility doesn't mean it's not necessarily negative, but there's going to be a couple of hiccups on the way for this year. And finally, regarding inflation, is that we have an inflation rate that is measured in US dollars, and this inflation rate has been high since, let's say, 2018. The cost of living in USD in Venezuela has been significantly increasing from a very low base, but this year we are seeing disinflation also on the inflation rate denominated on US dollars. Number 2 is moderate GDP growth. Now, like I mentioned starting the video, is that we have an expectation, a consensus amongst economists in Venezuela that the GDP should be around between 4%, the most conservative estimate, and the most positive, most, let's say, optimistic expectation was around or even over 10% of GDP. Now, if the sanctions by the US government are put fully in effect, and apparently it's going to be the case by the end of the year, something in the middle between the harsh sanctions that we have late of the past decade and the easing of sanctions that we have right now, the sanctions are going to be halfway into effect, but not as freely as we thought beginning of the year. So that reduces the outcome of GDP growth from an optimistic 10% to a more moderate 4 to 7%. Still, GDP growth, however, is not going to be as great as at some point was thought. It was the consensus among economists in Venezuela. So it will be around 5 to 7%, let's say. Number 3 is political agreement. Yet again, we have to discuss the politics between, of course, the internal politics, the Venezuelan government, and the opposition. Remember, this is an electoral year, and the main candidate of the opposition, Maria Corina Machado, most likely won't participate. Now, every time you do your expectation regarding the Venezuelan economy, you have to regarding politics, you have to take into account the Venezuelan government right now, the Chavismo, Nicolas Maduro, and his people. They're going to be in power many years to come. That's the most likely scenario. And there is a little, low probability, very, very low probability scenario where they are removed from power that most likely won't happen. So you have to take that into consideration when you are planning to do something in Venezuela for the long run. Now, since this political opposition candidate, Maria Corina Machado, was removed legally from the election, The United States is not very happy for that, and they want her to be reestablished as a legal candidate in the election. However, that most likely won't happen. And well, right now they're threatening to remove the sanctions, and not removing the sanctions, I'm sorry. And right now, what is going to affect the gold industry right now in Venezuela that is not as big as the oil industry. I don't see how the U.S. government is going to put fully into effect the sanctions for the oil industry in Venezuela, because right now all of the turmoil on the war in Russia, right now the proxy wars in the Middle East, and the whole situation with the crude oil industry worldwide, they want to keep the supply stable and the prices with somehow a stable level. And they need the Venezuelan government, the Venezuelan oil industry to contribute to such stability for the worldwide crude oil market. And it's not good for anybody, not only for the Venezuelan economy, but it's not good for the US economy and the worldwide economy to put fully into effect the previous sanctions. So I don't see that going on, but I see a little bit more of frictions on the second-tier industries in Venezuela. And number 4, of course, just mentioned that, this is a household thing in Venezuela, the crude oil prices. Yet again, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. It used to be a very important producer and exporter of crude oil. Right now, it's not the case. Venezuela went from producing around 3 million barrels of crude oil per day just a decade and a half ago. And right now, we are on the level around 800,000. That is very low compared to the 3 million of decades ago, but is the double, 2x, of the 400,000 barrels they used to produce just a few years ago on 2020 during the COVID crisis. Now, Venezuela can reach the mark of 1 million per day of crude oil, and could be actually surpass that by next year. However, of course, there are some nuances on the way, but most likely Venezuela will produce over 1 million barrels by 2025, and that helps to stabilize a little bit the worldwide crude oil industry, because remember, Venezuela is part of OPEC and OPEC Plus, the oil cartel, where Saudi Arabia and now Russia are the swing producers of the world, so they can reduce their production by a couple of million barrels per day, and that can that keep high the prices of crude oil worldwide. However, Venezuela is not although it's an active member of OPEC and OPEC Plus, is not participating on the voluntary production cuts because of the Venezuelan oil industry has been decimated on the past decade. However, the trend is upwards, that Venezuela will further increase their oil production. So that is good first for the Venezuelan economy, of course, also for the US economy and the developed nations, the OECD nations, the G7. It's good for them as well. And I won't say it's good for let's say, the other sphere of the world with the BRICS nations and so on, because it's a competitor for the oil industry market, but it still gives them more stability and more cash flow in order to have Venezuela as a trusted trading partner. So I think on that particular regard, it's going to be better by the end of the year, the oil industry in Venezuela.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.